Welcome, everybody. My name's Cassie Sofang. I'm the Globe Mission Mosquito Habitat Mapper campaign coordinator. I have an excellent group of folks today who are going to share some amazing work and the interconnectedness of our two campaigns. I have Brian Campbell, who's the leader of the Trees campaign, and our two projects overlap in a little bit of our areas. And I'm excited to have our guest speakers from the Latin American countries share those connections with us. We are in year 8, and for us, this is our 85th webinar. Today, and again, my order might be changed just a little bit based on our speaker presentation, though we'll be talking about some mosquitoes in the news and then connecting the trees to mosquitoes. We have the Trees Around the Latin American Countries, a holistic effort that connects trees and mosquito habitat mapper with some mangrove research. And they have an excellent presentation put together for us. And we have about 35 minutes, folks, for that presentation. So take your time. And we have questions from people that are within our group. Please put them in the chat. And we'll all be monitoring it and answering it as we can. And then Brian has some connections, NASA connections that he'll be sharing with us in the trees. And in general, we have the last few minutes for questions. So let's see, I'm going to jump right into our team presentation from Latin American countries. And I think, Josefina, you have the PowerPoint to share.
Yes, I have.
Okay.
It is ready, Jose. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mariana Sabino. I'm the regional coordinator for the GLOBE program for the LAC region. And we are going to talk about a little bit about our campaign related to trees. The next, please. Well, Trees Within LAC campaign is a student research campaign organized by the regional office, and it's aiming at identifying local tree species and analyzing their dynamics over time through field measurements using GLOBE protocols for trees, phenology, atmosphere, and soils. And we are finalizing our 3rd year of the campaign. This is our team. Andrea Ventoso, who is the GLOBE coordinator in Uruguay. Claudia Carovera, it's a mentor trainer in Peru. Ana Prieto, also a mentor trainer in Argentina. And Josefina, who is the communication assistant for the regional office, and me. The next. So the first year was in 2023 that we launched the Trees Within LAC campaign, and the main goal was identifying the most common trees species in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, describing their phenotypes and their variables related in their development. The year 2, last year, was the year of climate and carbon, and the main goal was analyze the relationships of changes in climatic variables in the development of trees and land cover throughout the year in the study sites. And this year, Trees, our allies, benefits for health and well-being. We are focused on investigating the relationships between climate variables and the development of trees ecosystem monitoring key indicators, such as surface temperature and the presence of suitable habitats for mosquitoes. Last year, during the regional meeting, we discussed with the country coordinators and the working group members for our region which topics they wanted to focus on the campaign this year, and we decided to create 3 subcommittees. One focused on urban heat islands, that is coordinated by Andrea Ventoso. The second one is mosquitoes, coordinated by Ana. And the third one is mangroves, coordinated by Claudia Caro. The next, please. So we make an open call inviting country coordinators and mentor trainers to join these subcommittees, and they needed to accept I don't know if it calls obligation, but the activities that they were aimed to develop was co-organizing the webinars, mentoring teachers to their research projects, promote the campaign in their countries and their institutions, create and develop an activity, a learning activity to implement in the classrooms, and organize a workshop for teachers training and also 2 webinars. These are the total measurements collected by the campaign through these 3 years. We are still collecting data this year, but we have an amazing data collection repository on the GLOBE website. So now I leave you with Anna, that she's going to talk about the mosquito subcommittee.
Thanks, Mariana. My name is Ana Prieto. I am mentor trainer from Globe. I am a campaign leader in the Globe Lab. The next, please. This is the subcommittee Mosquito. Aline Veloso is a country coordinator in Brazil. Ana Lorena Orozco is country coordinator in Costa Rica, country coordinator in Argentina, and Inés Edison Waleska and me is mentor training from Globe, and Rusty Lowe is a specialist Mission Mosquito in the United States. The next, please. The activities, the workshop, mosquito protocol bundle have a 4 session in October, the October month. In the next, please. This mosquito bundle use a different protocol from atmosphere, temperature protocol, precipitation, relative humidity, and the hydrosphere, water temperature, pH, water transparency, salinity, and dissolved oxygen. And biosphere, green down, green up, and cover, and biometry. And pedophora, soil moisture. All protocols have a lot of influence in the mosquito breeding and the mosquito cycle. The next, please. The workshop is very excited, have a very excited. For example, total 55 teachers from 12 countries across the region participate, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Guatemala, Panama, Paraguay, Peru, Dominican Republic, and Uruguay have most teachers, and 20 countries participate. The next, please. And have 2 webinars about mosquito. The next, please. The tracking mosquito breeding from backyard to the world is made with the speaker of Dishan from the University of Florida. It have 70 teachers and specialists from different countries, and in different countries about Latin America, and 1 people from Angola. Very real. The next, please. The key point, the presentation includes the importance of community participation in detecting and eliminating mosquito breeding sites in domestic environment. The use satellite and environment variable, for example, climate, vegetation, weather, and anticipate risks in different regions. Example of collaborative project integrating local observation with geographic information system (GIS) to prevent mosquito-borne disease. They have a lot of people presenting. The next, please. The other webinar is presented with Dr. Rusty Lowe. Is about science and communication, mosquito habitat monitoring, and human health. have more than 50 participants from 14 countries in Latin America and region. The next, please. The Dr. Rusty Love have a key point the importance of the health, the mosquito, and the how how show the big problem in the Latin America region. The next, please. I prepared with the subcommittee leaders the campaign to learning activities but help participants understand the mosquito phenomenon and disease associated. The next, please. For example, these activities is a digital awareness campaign. Mosquito don't have a Wi-Fi, but they enter in your home. Activities introduce a digital awareness campaign focused on safety and the artificial breeding site common found in the urban environment. Students investigate the mosquito life cycle, identify potential breeding habitat, and use Global Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper app, what record observation. They create a digital content, for example, with image, short message, or video to promote prevention practice with their communities. They activities integrate citizen science, environment education, and digital communication to encourage concrete action to eliminate breeding site and strengthen student engagement public health effort. The next, please. The other activity, mosquito-borne disease, is environment research with Global Observer in natural and artificial breeding sites. These activities give the student in identify and classify natural and artificial mosquito breeding sites. Using the Global Observer Mosquito Habitat Mapper, participants conduct field research around the school, record environment and biological observation, and analyze how to climate and local conditions influence the mosquito proliferation. The activity strengthens skill in citizen science, data collection, environmental monitoring, and public health awareness. Encourage students to propose preventive measures and reduce disease-transmitting mosquito population. The next, please, maybe continue the Dr. Claudia Caro.
Yeah, it's me. So thank you so much for this kind invitation. So now we are going to talk about the mangrove subcommittee. This is very important because mangroves is a not well-knowledge ecosystem for many of our countries. This is the reason why it was really important to introduce these ecosystems for most of the community in Latin America and the Caribbean region. So the next, please. This work was performed by a subcommittee conformed by Juan Felipe Restrepo from Colombia, Genevieve Suito, sorry, it's very difficult this last name, Toto Wingolo from Suriname, Maria Lorraine Rodriguez de Ruiz Alma from Dominican Republic, and the next, please. Also, Ana Lorena Orozco from Costa Rica, and Cheyenne Sampson from Suriname, and Miguel Ángel Guzmán from Guatemala. Next, please, Jose. This committee started this work first introducing the importance of the mangroves for the communities. This is the reason why we present a webinar whose main topic was presented by an expert in mangroves, the Dr. Maria del Milagro Carvajal Oces. So she is a marine biologist with over 15 years of experience in mangrove research. And the webinar highlighted the importance of this ecosystem for all the communities and also for the people. The focus of this webinar was how we can monitor the mangroves using bioindicators, for example. In this webinar, we had a participation of 40 people from 13 different countries across the region. The next, please, Jose. As the second step, we have a workshop, mangrove. We have a workshop to introduce the mangrove protocols bundle. And I think that a very interesting result of this work was the proposal of the mangroves bundle work that we did here. And we have a virtual workshop first based on 4 sessions. The next, please, Jose. In all of these sessions, we had the participations of 100 teachers, more or less, from 13 different countries. And the workshop was focusing on the understanding of the mangrove ecosystems through the scientific inquiry. The next, please. As I mentioned it, one of the main results of this work was a proposal of the mangroves bundle based on all of the 4 spheres of the GLOB program, and also we added some no GLOB protocols, but that we think that these kind of protocols are important also to monitor the mangroves. For example, we developed a protocol to monitor the trees diversity, and also a protocol to study the tides, a protocol to study the birds' biodiversity using the Shannon and Simpson and Margalef index, for example, to introduce these kinds of biodiversity index to teachers. And also, we developed a protocol to study the crabs activity. These protocols were developed for experts in mangroves, mainly from the people who works in Suriname with this kind of ecosystems. The next, please. Also, we have developed a learning activity to introduce the importance of the mangrove trees to the teachers. And we use the analogy of the Christmas tree, because when we have the Christmas tree, this Christmas tree offers us a lot of gifts. So the main topic of this learning activity was to highlight what are the main ecosystem services that mangroves offer to the community. So using this analogy of the Christmas tree was really interesting, because the students can propose, for example, what kind of gifts they think that the mangroves offer. The next, please. And also, we developed an online puzzle that the students can put together to discover what are the main ecosystem services that mangroves offer to us, and at the same time to discover what are the main problems that are affecting the mangroves. So this learning activity is available for teachers also in the webpage of the Latin American region. The next, please. And that's all related to the mangrove subcommittee work. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was really interesting. I just have a question, but you had over 100 teachers in your mangroves. How did you get such interest in the education community? What was your method to reach so many teachers?
I don't know, Marianne.
Yeah, I think that it's really an important topic in our region, because many countries has mangroves and they need and they are interested in learning about it and researching about their mangroves near their communities. And we have many teachers in our distribution mailing list, and we also made some social media posts, and well, we invite everyone to join all of our activities.
I think that's a credit to your program. I mean, so many folks came. That was amazing. So, and
Thank you, Casey.
your mangrove with the gift, I mean, that is true. And I'm sure Brian will talk about that too. The gift of trees to the environment is stellar. So the materials you produced and created are awesome. Did the teachers, were they also charged with creating new materials too, or was it something that you had prepared already for them?
Well, we created 4 ebooks a few years ago with different learning activities separated for each sphere, hydrosphere. But this year, we asked the participants of the subcommittees to create a specific learning activity related to their topic. So that's why we created new activities related to mangroves, mosquitoes, and urban heat islands. They are brand new and they are uploaded into the website so everyone can use it or share it.
Excellent. Brian, is there a follow-up question that you might have, or is this a great segue to your comments?
Kind of all the above. But one thing about mangroves that I find interesting is I think mangroves are something that a lot of people don't realize they're there because, I've spent a lot of time in the Florida Keys and, when I was pretty young, I spent some time down there and I didn't know what they were. I just assumed they were just trees along the coast. And I didn't and then when we got up close to them, I remember as a child seeing the roots and I was like, what are these things? I couldn't really walk out on them because it just seemed, they seemed like really strange because you can't really walk on them. The roots looked weird. You couldn't swim around them. But then as I got older, I realized, you know, they served a really amazing purpose, not just like what other trees do, but the whole, helping with erosion and all of that. So they just, now I look at them completely differently. And when I talk to people about trees and they want to know more about mangroves, and I'll be mentioning some things in my my short presentation, some of the things that we've done with the ICET2 mission, some of the researchers have done using ICET2 data. I won't get into specifics of it, but it's where you can go to look at some of that data and some of the stuff with ICET2. It's just amazing, what mangroves are. And as I said, I think it's something that a lot of people just don't realize, what they are and just what they provide, for our planet.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's important to let teachers and people and the communities know that mangroves are trees too, because sometimes people don't realize that there are trees.
Yeah.
So it's really important to talk about this topic and to get people to understand the importance for the ecosystems, just to conserve the mangroves in their communities.
Yeah, and also if you allow me to add something, this is the reason why we created or developed this learning activity about ecosystem services, because ecosystem services is a very hard word, but at the same time, mangroves is a not well knowledge ecosystem, for example, for all the South American countries, because this is a kind of ecosystem very popular in Central American or North American. But for us was a very important challenge first to improve the knowledge of the people about these important ecosystems. And this is the reason why the first workshop was related to describe what kind of trees we have in the mangrove, or what are the biophysical structures or the structure of the mangrove. Yeah, it was a really nice work.
Excellent. Thank you very much for sharing it and putting together such a great presentation.
Thank you, Casey. And also it's very important because we have developed or proposed some new protocols. We call that not GLOBE protocols, but I think that they are very important to understand also the biodiversity related to the mangroves. So all these protocols are also available for our community.
Thank you. Brian, would you care to kind of tie in your Trees Around the World campaign?
Yep, for sure. Let me go ahead and
Thank
share my
you.
screen here. Just give me a second. All right, can you see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Okay, let's get started here. So, all right, yeah, we're going to try to connect a little bit with some of the things we do at NASA and primarily what we do with a lot of the satellites that we have flying through space right now. And what you'll see there, you can see there, of course, you see, South America there, and you see those green blips, those dots there. Those are the tree height observations, from GLOBE, from the Globe Visualization System. And that satellite you see there is ICET2, which I'll talk about in a second. And it ties into the trees that we're doing, that we're measuring. But yeah, so as Cassie mentioned, we have the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign, and we are also in year 8 right now. Next week, next Tuesday, we have our 87th campaign webinar. But yeah, so that's kind of our shareable for the overarching shareable for the campaign. And we have participants from 70 countries. And the reason I'm showing this is, and if you look down at the Latin America and Caribbean region, you can see there's lots of green for participants in those countries in the LAC. So, we're extremely excited to have lots of Latin American, Caribbean countries that are part of the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign. And I'm going to do a quick shameless plug for what we have coming up real fast, and then we will get into the meat and bones of the presentation. But we are having a short 1-month intensive observation period for tree height and land cover for the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign that begins on the 21st of November and runs through the 21st of December. And it's basically we're just looking for lots of tree height and land cover observations during that time for anywhere in the world. And we're going to be doing some, after we get that data in, we're going to be doing some comparisons, but of the tree height data with the ICESat-2 data from space. And then we're going to be looking at the land cover data and going to be doing some comparisons with the Landsat mission data from space. So, and I'm just on this shareable here, we're just showing you some of the cool seasonal change that we're seeing, some of the green down, that we're seeing in the Northern Hemisphere, especially. We're seeing the green down, and these are some recent pictures over the last month. And you can see here, I grabbed some of these off the Globe Visualization System from Germany, Italy, Lithuania, and the United States. You can see some of these amazing colors. And of course, we don't have the green down right now in the Southern Hemisphere, where a lot of the folks presenting here are from, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, and Madagascar. But we see lots of beautiful green down there. Right now, where I am in the state of Maryland in the United States, it's really pretty right now with lots of green down, lots of autumn colors here. It's nice. It's not very fun with all the leaves on the ground where I have to do a lot of yard work outside. So right today, it's been raining off and on today, so no yard work today. But yeah, so, if you go to our campaign page, you can check that out and check out that IOP. So just that little plug for that's coming up, at the end of this week on Friday, this IOP begins. So at NASA, we have these Earth observing satellites, and I'll just play this here. All of these ones that are moving around the Earth here have their own jobs. They are looking at different parts of the Earth and the atmosphere. And then as you zoom out, you have these other things, other satellites that are doing other parts. They're communicating with some of the other satellites in space. They are making sure things are working correctly. But the ones that I really want you to focus on are those ones that are like, right here, moving around the Earth. And they're ones like GPM, the Global Precipitation Measurement Satellite, the Ice Cloud and Land Elevation Satellite 2, or ICESat-2, ones like the Landsat satellite, ones like the JEDI mission on the International Space Station, which I'll talk about. They're super important to what we do and what we're talking about with trees. We have other ones, like the MODIS instrument. We have ones that, are looking at, ones that have been tracking, mosquito outbreaks and vector-borne illnesses, across the planet, where you see these vulnerabilities, across the world. And I have a little a data map coming up a little later on in the presentation. But, NASA is, NASA has these satellites that is looking at that data, but the satellites are just providing this information, but it's what the scientists and researchers and folks like you do with this data that make this data make sense, how we apply this data, whether it's looking at, a dengue outbreak or looking at, the distribution of mangroves across the planet, or looking how, where the trees are on Earth so we can figure out, the amount of carbon the trees are pulling in from the atmosphere, and that's all the data coming from the satellites. We have to make sense of this data, right? So we have some instruments and satellites in space like ICESat-2 and JEDI. So on the left side, you see ICESat-2. It's an independent satellite, so meaning that it flies on its own around the planet, a near polar orbit. And then we have this one on the right side, the JEDI mission. It's an instrument on the International Space Station. And the ICESat-2 satellite is basically focusing on looking at the polar regions and seeing how the ice elevation and height is changing. But because it's a laser altimeter, it's measuring the height of objects on Earth. And because it's doing that, it's measuring the height of trees. It's measured several 100 billion tree heights on Earth right now. There's about 3 trillion trees on the planet, so it hasn't gotten all of them yet. JEDI, on the other hand, is just measuring tree height. And you can see here where the orbit is. Here's the ICET-2 orbit here on the left. You can see what it covers. It covers the entire planet. JEDI, since it's on the space station, it's basically in that mid-latitude area, 51.6 degrees north and 51.6 degrees south. So it's looking in those areas as well. So when you have a combination of these, we really get an amazing database of where the trees are, how much carbon is being stored by these trees, and where the carbon is. So we can really figure that out. And with these two, and with the GLOBE program, with the tree measurements, all these awesome tree measurements coming in from our amazing folks with the Latin American and Caribbean region. And I'm putting this here, and I swiped this from one of our great presentations that you folks did. We had all these folks here, Andrea, Claudia, Anna, Mariana, and Josefina, presented at one of our Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign webinars recently. I love these graphics here. I wanted to put them there so they can be recognized. But one thing, this graphic here on the right side, this is just, when we had the presentation during the webinar, everybody was astounded by just the sheer numbers we had here, over 735,000 measurements. And, you can see here, we had almost 30,000, tree height observations between February 2023 and May 2025. So just an amazing, dedication, from the Latin American Caribbean community here in this region. So I wanted to showcase this, Joe. So, just the combination of the satellite data and the ground-based data just provides just an amazing amount of data for student and professional researchers alike. So first of all, the tree height data, where is this coming from? We have all this tree height data here coming in. You can see on the maps, I have a combination of, from the United States, because that's where, I'm coming from. And then we have the global data. And then I went over here and grabbed a map of the Latin America and Caribbean region, where we have, all this data coming in. And of course, you can see here, where the Amazon rainforest is. We don't have a lot of data there in the middle because, as all of you know, it's pretty hard to get into the middle of the Amazon rainforest to get that data. It's a little tricky, isn't it? It's pretty dense in there, so there's not a lot of people walking through the middle of the Amazon rainforest to get tree height data. We have some good data on the outskirts of it. That's great. But you can see here, there's a lot of data coming from your region in the Latin American Caribbean region. So, we're super excited to see that all the time. And then I went and I just grabbed some of the data from the last 3 years, from 23, 24, and 25. And you can see, a lot of amazing data coming in, from those areas. So, we're super excited. And this has just been such an amazing program to work with, all of, who are part of this, the leaders of the Latin American Caribbean region group, they have, been part of the Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign, since the beginning. So, and, folks like Anna have been there, just about close to every webinar that we've had. So great communication and lots of great, projects, and the clubs and everything that, they lead have been, second to none, been great. So just a little bit that ties into, what the main topic of this webinar is about. As I mentioned, and Claudia was talking about mangroves, there's been some folks who are on the ICET-2 team, and they're internal and external to NASA. What that means is some of the folks who have been at NASA working on the ICET-2 team, and then, some external folks who use the NASA ICET-2 data have been working together to work on some mangrove, science, using ICET-2 data. And these are the major topics they've been working on, resilience and vulnerability to disturbances. They've been working, mangrove science, utilizing these United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And then a couple of projects they've been using this, African blue carbon, and it was also mentioned before, South Florida coastal ecosystem vulnerability, and something called silver carbon in Bangladesh. So you can check these out just as examples of some of these projects that have used the ICET-2 data. So it's, it's super cool to see that this ICET-2 data has been used, to look at this mangrove. And I just love this image here. This is an image. This isn't an ICET-2 image. It's basically a model that was created using ICET2 data. And those lines that you see, I placed a satellite there to just show you where those lines are. Those are the ICET2 orbits that are over these locations where we're getting these elevation data over the mangrove. And then we have, specifically, when we're talking about, like Globe Observer and NASA and tree height, I'm going to show you a quick series of videos here that tie in that NASA connection to the things we're talking about. And they're super short, but here's one that we put together where we tie in the importance of the tree height and to Globe Observer and NASA.
Trees. Diverse, they can be towering giants or petite saplings. Some live for thousands of years, recording their age in rings. They provide food, shade, shelter, and more for wildlife and for us. Some tell us when the seasons change through their leaves, while others continue to stand steadfast throughout the year. But no matter their differences, their height can reveal information about their ecosystems. By using satellites and ground-based measurements, scientists can track tree growth and monitor how well an ecosystem supports trees. Tree height is also used to measure the biomass of a forest, allowing scientists to calculate how much carbon is stored by trees. These are all important factors in conservation, resource management, and monitoring the climate. By using only a smartphone and the Globe Observer app, citizen scientists and students are helping create a global inventory of tree height available for everyone to use. You can collect your own tree height data by downloading and using the Globe Observer app.
All right, so that was the tree tie-in. And now I have one of our, I'm going to say former NASA researchers, she recently left NASA and went to the MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Dr. Lola Fatoyinbo. You may remember her. She presented at one of several of our Trees Around the Globe Student Research Campaign webinars. But she talks about the Florida mangroves, which I mentioned, and they were trying to figure out why some of these mangrove forests were dying off. So this is a short video. It's only it's a little over 2 minutes long, almost 3 minutes long, but it's super important because it goes through, the research that they started off trying to figure out why this was happening, and looking at all this data just to try to figure it out. So it's basically, talking about a research project just in under 3 minutes. So it's really important stuff. So here, check this out.
A mangrove forest is a forest made out of trees that grow in areas where land meets sea. So these are essentially wetland forests that are only present in tropical or subtropical regions worldwide. My name is Dr. Lola Fatoyinbo, and I'm a research scientist in the Biospheric Sciences Lab. Mangroves are important for a whole number of reasons. They provide what we call ecosystem services to humans. And some of those services that they provide are storm surge protections, protection from waves and erosion of the coast. They're also really important for water filtration and for protection of the coastline. So in 2017, when Hurricane Irma hit the southern Florida, we were really interested in getting a better idea of how resilient mangrove forests would be to increasing storm impacts that we are expecting with changes in climate. We worked with an airborne instrument suite called G-LIGHT. This is the Goddard LiDAR hyperspectral thermal instrument, which is a small pod that has multiple instruments set up together that you can essentially attach to an airplane. What we found was that actually the main cause of a permanent die-off in mangrove forests is when you have these really high storm surge that come into areas and result in ponding of water in these basin mangrove areas. So essentially areas where salt water becomes stagnant. And when that water becomes stagnant, it gets a really high concentration of nutrients and the salt, leading to a permanent die-off of these mangrove areas, which is in some ways becoming a vicious cycle because in those areas, because they're basins, you're not able to grow new mangroves. that are then accumulating more soil. And so you end up with mangroves dying, the peat collapsing, and that peat collapse not allowing for new mangroves to come in and resulting in permanent die-off. So I think the greatest takeaway from the study is that even though mangroves are often thought as being really resilient and resistant to harsh conditions, they are still really vulnerable, and we need to make sure that we're able to maintain the natural conditions and hydrology that they grow in for them to continue to protect us from these extreme conditions.
So I thought that was an interesting study that they did with mangroves, not just talking about the importance of mangroves, but even though they're highly resilient, trees and organisms out there, they are susceptible to their own issues. And then finally, something I want to just showcase here is that NASA has been looking at. I think I mentioned this earlier. NASA is looking at satellite data to help understand where they see these disease outbreaks by looking at a combination of sea surface temperature anomalies to looking at these areas that are susceptible to disease outbreaks during times of like El Nino, La Nina times like this. So this is looking at these global disease outbreaks during 2009 to 2018, and when this plays, you're going to see these colored dots here. These colored dots are all these different things here, and you can see some of these of course are mosquito vector-borne diseases here on the bottom. But you're going to see this chart on the bottom as it goes up, and then you're going to see something pop up here where you see this large reddish peak here at about 2015 to 16. I believe that's the El Nino, and you're going to see kind of a spike in things happening here where we have this more precipitation happening, where we have a chance for more disease outbreaks. So let me play this here for a second. And you can see that highlighted area there around the equator with the Nino index. But then you can see those circles, those colored dots jumping around the map as well. And then you can really see the outbreaks there, the dengue. Then you really see the outbreak during the strong El Nino. So it's an interesting application with the satellite data, a very important one as well. And then also, I wanted to show you this. This is the second to last slide here. But I wanted to show you this, another way of tracking disease by satellite. This comes from a Earth Observatory article from a few years ago. I believe this is from 2020. This is showing you, some of the advances of tracking disease by satellite, where we have in Africa here, Somalia, Kenya, and Tanzania from December 2006 to 2007. And then where we looked at the vegetation index, where it's looking at the greenness of vegetation, where we really focused on this, trying to understand and, understand what the early warning signs were for this, and being able to predict these early warning signs to help mitigate, these disease outbreaks, just Rift Valley fever cases. You can see here, we really didn't have this mitigation system back in 2006 and 2007, but then we did have these. We did figure out what we can do to help mitigate this system as these early warning systems by 2015, 2016. And as you can see here, these systems from the Rift Valley fever, 2006, 2007, really, having this early detection system really helped out, drastically by 2015, 2016, with a lot of help from, understanding it via satellite data. So with that said, I went here and, I have all the links here, of everything I showed on here. So when the recording is eventually up there, when Cassie puts that up there, this will be up here for people to see. These are all the links for all the recordings, all the videos and stuff, and the missions that I talked about today. So I'll pass it back to you, Cassie, and I will stop sharing and head back to the main room.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate that. And to kind of tie in with some of the comments that Brian made about climate change, just wanted to bring this mosquito information to your attention. And that's for the first time, They've identified mosquitoes in Iceland. And so it's a cold tolerant species of mosquito. And our colleague, Dr. Ryan Carney from the University of South Florida, has worked with us on a project that I'll share in just a moment. But he is praising our citizen science-led discovery because apps like NASA's Globe Observer helps document these particular phenomena. Finding one in Iceland, who knew? But with the warmer weather and the warming seasonal temperatures and greening up and staying longer, we can expect to have a few more chikers making it to Iceland. Along that line, Dr. Carney has worked with us on the identifying with AI the mosquito larvae, and again pointing out that it was a Globe observer who first found the Anopheles stevensi in a tire. And so every picture that you take of a mosquito larvae and you document its location with both habitat and land cover is an important step in helping to build these models much more robustly. We have published a new paper, Artificial Intelligence and Citizen Science as a Tool for Global Mosquito Surveillance, and that's the Madagascar example that was just shown, but it's official now. And the mosquito dashboard that we once used with ESRI environment is now an open platform. We began that in 2017 with the data, and it is combining 3 different data sets, of the dashboard, Globe Observer, Mosquito ID, and iNaturalist data. And so as you go to the dashboard and click and zoom in, you can see all of our Globe Observer observations for mosquitoes included here. And to pull it all together, but mosquitoes live in tree holes, and the rain collects, the mosquitoes breed. It's a nice natural habitat. And this is one of our colleagues from Texas, Dr. Anita Schiller, who is working with Rusty Lowe on identifying mosquito larvae in tree holes. And remember that, deforestation, selective logging are changing some of the habitat areas. But again, documenting what you see with your land cover, your tree data, everything is important for keeping our models robust. And you make the connection, as Brian mentioned, between our satellite data, mosquitoes, trees, and land cover. So thank you again very much for all of your contributions. Without you and your cadre of newly trained citizen scientists, our data wouldn't be as rich as it is right now. With that, I'll stop my slide sharing and thank everybody for joining us today. And as Brian mentioned, I'll have the recording posted. If you have additional questions, please reach out to anybody that you know or don't know on the Trees or Mosquito campaign or from the LAC, and we'd be happy to address them and share them with each other if we're not able to answer them ourselves. Any last comments from our presenters? I had a great time. I learned so much again. So thank you very much for everything. Brian, thanks for jumping in and helping us with the connection between trees, mosquitoes, mangroves, and Latin American community. So Mariana, Anna, Josefina, and Claudia, thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Casey, for the invitation, and thank you, Brian, for all the amazing pictures that you showcased about the LAC vision. We are really proud of our campaign, and like I always said, you were our inspiration with your Trees Around the Globe campaign. We just adapted it a little bit for our vision, but it's always a pleasure working together with you and your team.
Well, you've adapted it a lot, and I just love everything that you all are doing. So, it's amazing work.
Thank you. And continuing with this relationship between mosquitoes and trees, we have our webinar tomorrow, our monthly webinar of the Trees Within LAC campaign, and it's going to be about One Health, just to reinforce this idea on how trees affect our health. So of course, you are welcome to join us.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.